What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Forgotten Jesus podcast. My name is Andrew Bolton. We have Candy and Robbie Gallaty. Pastor, last time we're going to call it a holy rabbit trail.
Yeah.
we started talking about is John the Baptist and Essene.
Yep.
And we landed in a totally random place. We felt like it's spirit-led. So today we're going to continue the conversation about was John the Baptist and Essene.
Yeah, I think the listeners actually don't mind the rabbit trails. Do you?
No, I don't think so at all.
Like them.
Yeah, I think that's what they love about this podcast, which is another reason why on Sundays I preach with a full manuscript.
Thank you.
Yeah, because we may still be meeting at this point.
We may never get through the book of Revelation if
still,
you don't have the manuscript.
No, we never get. Okay, let's just pick up where we left off last week, just for context, Candy. So go to Matthew chapter 3, verses 1 through 3. Again, we won't reference any of these verses, but just to have something
just to
read.
Scripture in
just
the podcast.
To have something written. No. Verse 2 is the connection to the Essene community, but I want you to read.
So read verses 1 through 3.
1 through 3 for context again.
Okay. In those days, John the Baptist came preaching in the wilderness of Judea and saying, "Repent, because the kingdom of heaven has come near. For he is the one spoken of through the prophet Isaiah, who said, a voice of one crying out in the wilderness, prepare the way for the Lord, make his paths straight."
Yeah, so that is two things we see just right away. In the wilderness of Judea, that's where the Essenes were, right there at the Qumran area next to the Dead Sea. And then we have the verse that the Essenes used to start the movement. So let me give you a context of the movement. Do you have any idea when the Essenes started officially as a group? Do you have an idea?
As in like a year?
Yeah, year. What do you think?
Give us some choices.
Okay. 200, 150, 100, or 50 BC?
C.
You going to go with 100 BC?
Yes, if that was C.
What were the choices again?
200,
Always go with C.
200, 150, 100, or 50 BC. Jesus is born roughly 4 BC,
Right.
so just put it in context.
I'm going to say, it's 200 or 50. I don't.
Wow, that's wrong. Andrew went right with
Yes.
the C.
Listen,
C.
y'all.
C.
Multiple choice. Always pick C. If you
Always
don't know.
pick C. You know, that's how you. When you used to take tests, did you
Yes.
just run
If I
through
did
C?
not know, I always chose C.
That's true.
I don't know where I heard that, but
I think I've heard that too. I think I might have used that back in the day. Okay, they started 100 BC by a guy, you're going to love this, named Judas the Essene.
Ooh.
Did you know that? Judas the Essene.
I did not.
We know that from Josephus. Josephus talks about this. So the Essene community, remember, started because they saw the corrupt priesthood in Jerusalem. They fled to the desert. They're going to start this movement now as kind of not rebellion, but a statement against the corruption. We're going to be different. Okay, so they were priests by lineage who gave up the priesthood to go out to the desert. They go out to the desert and they have a rule book, a book of
Question.
Sorry,
Just
Candy's already holding up the finger.
Okay.
Just want
Here we go.
to make sure I understand this.
No.
So you said they are from the priestly lineage, the Essenes are, and they were upset about the corruption, so they move out to the Qumran area. So that means they're Levites.
Yeah, and we'll link to a show we did on this a while back. They are by lineage from Aaron. Remember, you have to be from Aaron,
Right.
Moses' brother. And what happened was in about 167, I think 172, Antiochus Epiphanes comes on the scene, remember, from Rome. And basically, the priesthood goes from being handed down genealogically
Right.
from a father to a son
To being purchased.
to being purchased.
Correct.
Right. Excuse me. So the people who are rightly allowed to be the priest are not leading anymore, and so they know the Titanic's going to sink, and so they want to get off and get as far away as possible because they know this thing's going to fail. Okay? So the point we made there with the priesthood is the first corrupt priest was Jason, remember, and it goes all the way down to Caiaphas and Annas at the time of Jesus, both of whom are not. They should not even hold the position to begin with. They don't have the right to even hold the position, nor have the authority to speak as a priest, and yet they're going to condemn Jesus for being, Jesus, you're not who you say you are, and yet they're not who they say or claim to be, right? So, okay, so the priesthood, so these are guys who have access to the temple as Essenes. They can eat choice food. They can, have all the amenities and choose not to, okay? They go to the desert and they start calling themselves by a name. Okay, do you want to guess the name that they use for themselves.
It's not Essenes.
Well, Essenes, but they have a phrase. They have three phrases that they call themselves. Number one is they call themselves the poor in spirit.
Okay.
Number two, they call themselves the sons of light. And three, they refer to themselves as the unity. Like, we're going to unify the nation of Israel. Because they believe, remember we just read the text, a voice of one preparing the way for the Lord in the wilderness. And they believe, if you read the rest of Isaiah 40, the reference there, they believe that if they prepare the way of the Lord with their bodies, what would happen? What's the rest of the verse? And the glory of the Lord will come.
Right.
So they believed physically, if they go to the desert and they go to the wilderness and disconnect from society, corruption, God will come. And he did. And he did. Wow. Jesus came, right? Okay. Here's a couple things you got to know about the Essenes that people don't understand or don't realize. Number one is they believed in two messiahs.
Really?
Yes.
What does that mean?
Yes. Look at Candy's face. I love this. I love when I throw stuff out that she's not prepared. And by the way, we don't prepare. The only one who prepares or knows where we're going
is Robert.
Is Robert.
Every Robert who takes our show
Robert
notes.
does take notes. And me. You know.
Every week we ask him, where are we, Robert?
So they believed in two messiahs in a sense, or two roles the Messiah would fulfill, okay? One, he would be a
Two
priest.
roles is different than two messiahs.
Yeah, well, you could go both ways. They believed two messiahs and two roles. I would say, let me say this. They believed in two messiahs. I would say it's one messiah, two roles. And I'll show you why.
Okay.
They believed the Messiah would be a priest from the lineage of Aaron and a prince or descendant from David. Watch this. So the Messiah would fill the role of priest and king.
Right.
Okay? King David, priest from Aaron. Okay? They also believe that this one from David would atone for, as the priest would atone for the sins. So the Aaron one would atone for the sins, and then the king would teach the word and the law, uphold the law. So you have this priest kingly role. They had a couple rules. They're very regimented. They live by a rule of life, if you will. Okay, so they predate the monastery, if you will, in this. Every third night, they spent the entire night in prayer and study. They were really big on study and prayer. They copied the word, as we learned last week. They immersed themselves in the water every morning and evening, ritualistically.
Okay.
Now remember,
so not just when they were writing the name of God, like we talked about last time.
Yes.
But also just other parts of the day.
Yeah. Now, if you're writing the name of God, you're swimming all day. I mean,
Yeah.
you're
I was
just
going to
going.
say,
You're,
they're just in the water all the time.
yeah, you're in the hot tub all day. Yeah. The challenge for them was they lived in the desert. Guess how many inches of rain they expected in the Qumran or were praying for every year? You ready for this? Take a guess.
Half an
They were
inch.
praying for it.
I mean, they're praying for rain, but they only got at the most 2 inches.
Oh, really? Wow.
Inch and a half.
Yeah.
All year long.
We got that this morning, I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure.
yeah. They
So
they
crazy.
ate very minimally. They were very frugal. They were minimalist. They pushed away aesthetics and things of the world and flamboyance and luxury. They ate because they're making a statement. They're making a statement, but because remember, in the Jewish culture, you could say one thing, you believe whatever, show us.
Yeah.
And you proved your faith was not genuine unless you lived out what you believe. Show
Did
us.
they interact with people outside of themselves?
You're gonna
Because they almost sound like a monk, monks or something.
Yes, I would say more so monastery driven than hospitality driven. However, they has one little caveat here. You're going to love this. They ate 2 small meals a day, very small meals. A lot of them were scribes, so they took turns because they copied down the scrolls. And thankfully, the greatest discovery of the 20th century, in my opinion, the Dead Sea Scrolls, all of them were from the Essenes.
Really?
They found them from the Essene community. And then 2 more things. Number one is they were known, to your point, for adoption.
Okay.
They would welcome anyone who was traveling in the community. They were really big on hospitality. So let me take that back. You could be welcomed into the community for a stay, but you weren't welcomed into the community for good.
Right.
Okay, so that was different. But they did really emphasize adoption. So if a child was orphaned by parents, came to the community, they took it upon themselves to welcome this child into the community. Now, the child had to abide by the rules and the laws, right? Sure. But the final one, and these two are really important. The final one, adoption is important. But the second one is they celebrated Passover on a different day. That's what people don't realize.
Interesting.
Yes, on a different day. It was one day earlier.
Why?
And I can't. I was thinking about that today. I didn't research it. I'm going to guess here, but I'm going to say it was again a shot at the nation, a shot at the nation of Israel. Like you guys are celebrating with the nation. We want to be set apart even from your corruption. So we're going to celebrate it a day earlier. Now this is going to come into play in a moment. A guy named Geza Vermes wrote a book called The Complete Dead Sea Scrolls in English. So he translated, gave some commentary. He said the Essenes had a different yearly calendar. This is on page 79 of The Complete Dead Sea Scrolls in English. This is what he says. The Essenes had a different yearly calendar than the temple priests, and thus a different day for Passover. Passover, the 15th of the first month, which is normally April, was always celebrated for them on a Wednesday. Wednesday afternoon. Remember, Wednesday night starts Wednesday night, which is actually the next day, but you get it because they went from sundown to sundown.
Right.
But here's the final thing, and then we'll start making some application points. They believe their Messiah. Remember, he's of the lineage of David. He's going to uphold the law. He's going to implement the rules and regulations. They called him. You ready for this? The teacher of. It was a phrase they used. Their Messiah would be called the teacher of righteousness, okay? Because he's going to come and instruct them on how to live rightly, which obviously the Sadducees and the Pharisees weren't. Okay, turn with me to two scriptures, and I'll show you where we get this. Hosea 10:12, and Candy, and Andrew, Habakkuk. We're going old. We're going back to the real prophets.
Hosea what, love?
Hosea 10:12 and Habakkuk 2:4. Okay, so this is how we get the idea of the Messiah as the teacher of righteousness, okay?
Okay.
You go first, Candace.
Okay. Hosea 10:12. Sow righteousness for yourselves and reap faithful love. Break up your unplowed ground. It is time to seek the Lord until he comes and sends righteousness on you like the rain.
Okay. So they believe that God was going to send his teacher of righteousness to instruct them in all the ways. And they claim that verse for the Messiah. Now read Habakkuk 2:4, Andrew.
All right, Habakkuk 2:4. Look, his ego is inflated. He is without integrity, but the righteous one will live by his faith.
Now read the next verse. This is the verse we know.
Okay. Moreover, wine betrays an arrogant man is never at rest. He enlarges his appetite like Sheol, and like death, he is never satisfied. Is this the right one?
No.
Well, listen, I'm trying to read it with confidence.
You learning.
He gathers all the nations to himself. He collects all the people for himself.
Okay. I am
forever and ever. Amen.
I got the wrong verse here.
Okay.
The word of the Lord.
No, you read the right
word
verse, but the next
Lord.
verse is not. Okay. You're supposed to. Hold on, what translation?
Habakkuk?
No, yeah.
2:4.
Read Habakkuk 2:4 again. You got the CSB, which threw me off. Go ahead, read it again.
This is the one you told me to buy.
I know.
Habakkuk 2:4. Look, his ego is inflated. He is without integrity, but the righteous one will live by his faith.
Okay, his faith through. Okay, yeah, the righteous shall live by faith. Okay, or his faith. Yeah, okay.
Let's see, there's a footnote here.
There's a footnote. Okay.
It says, or faithfulness.
Faithfulness, yeah, that's what threw me off. His faith kind of threw me off. Okay, yes, the righteous shall live by faith. And so basically they're saying this idea of the Messiah will come to teach us righteousness or instruct us in righteousness. So they called it the teacher of righteousness or the teacher. Now, why are these things important? Because we're going to digress one more time before we ask the question. Is John? I just got to do this for us because this is going to be important. Go to Luke 22. Let me show you something cool. Okay. It's another rabbit trail, but worth the hunt. I promise you.
Worth the price of admission.
This is going to be worth the hunt, and yeah, the price of admission right here. Luke 22. I'm going to show you because I know a lot of people are skeptical, thinking, really? Did they have a Passover the day before? Did they look at the Essenes as a teacher of righteousness, really. Before you go here, let me give you one more clarifying insight here.
Okay.
There were, well, I'll hold it. Okay, Luke 22:7. Here we go. This is going to be a nice little Easter egg for us.
Then the day of unleavened bread came when the Passover lamb had to be sacrificed. Am I right here?
Oh, yeah, keep going.
Jesus sent Peter and John, saying, "Go and make preparations for us to eat the Passover." "Where do you want us to prepare it?" they asked him. "Listen," he said to them, "when you've entered the city, a man carrying a water jug will meet you. Follow him into the house he enters. Tell the owner of the house, 'The teacher asks you, where is the guest room where I can eat the Passover with my disciples?' Then he will show you a large furnished room upstairs. Make the preparations there." So they went and found it just as he had told them, and they prepared the Passover.
Okay. Now, here a couple of things we notice here. Just trying to find the one reference. Okay, got it. Okay. I might need to put this in my Bible. Okay. So the first line says what? Look real quick. We're going to do some quick Bible investigation.
Day of unleavened bread.
Day of unleavened bread. Which day is what? Which is Wednesday.
Ooh, Wednesday.
Okay, which is Wednesday.
Okay.
The day, because remember, they have to sacrifice the lamb the day before so they can enjoy the lamb on Passover because they can't work.
Right.
Okay. Now, Jesus. So Luke is real meticulous. This is not Passover. This is the day before. Okay. The day before Passover for the Jews was not Passover, but for the Essenes, what? Passover for them. Now watch this.
So Day of Unleavened Bread is the same day that the lamb was to be sacrificed.
Yes.
Because they
according
couldn't
to the
work
Bible.
the
Which
next
would have
day.
been Wednesday.
Which would have been Wednesday. So Jesus sends his crew. What'd you say?
No, sorry. I'm just saying because they couldn't work. Like all that had to happen on Wednesday because they could not work the next day.
Yeah, because it was Passover and it was Shabbat too. So they couldn't do it. It was the Sabbath, source of Sabbath. Okay. So Peter and John say, Jesus said, go make preparations to eat the Passover. Okay. Where do you want to prepare it? He said, listen, when you enter the city, a man carrying a water jug will meet you. Now, this is pretty interesting because the problem with this is what? What is the problem with a man carrying a water jug?
There's no water. There's no rain. It's only rains like
jugs weren't invented until the 1900s.
Ooh, the Stanley Cup. The Stanley Cup. This is the original Stanley Cup. No. Yeah. The little cup. Okay. No.
Where are they getting water from?
No, this is not in the Essene community anymore. This is back. You're putting the two stories together. This is at the end of Jesus' life in Jerusalem.
Oh,
so
gotcha. Okay.
They're not by the Qumran. So it does rain on top of the Mount of Moriah,
Gotcha.
where the temple is. No. So there's water there. Okay. The problem is not the water jug. The problem is the man carrying the water jug.
He shouldn't be carrying it.
Why?
Because Sabbath is coming.
Well, no, you're looking too tight now. No, men didn't carry water jugs.
Like I was going to say that, but I was afraid that was going to step on Candy's. I didn't know. Like,
yeah, you didn't
were
want to
women supposed to carry water jugs?
I
don't know.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
In that culture, you got to remember, men never carried a water jug. It was always a woman.
Right, I'm going to tell Jenny.
Why?
I'm not swapping out the water jug, babe.
Babe, you got to pick up the Dasani
what
forks.
is
I'm not touching it.
What is the cultural significance
Okay,
of
here's
that?
the thing. So back then...
Because if it was heavy, I would have handed it to you. If we were back there.
Yeah, but that's not how it works. No.
What's wrong with that?
They could carry it on their head.
Who?
They carried the women. You ever seen women in the ancient culture? They
No,
carried
I
this
know.
water jug on their heads. Or
No, I'm saying, but why only women? You got to think these water jugs were heavy.
Yeah, but these were tough women back then. You got to understand. These women were serious. Serious back then.
Unlike women today, is what Pastor's saying.
Candy's face. Yeah, I love it. What you can see if you're watching, you can see it. Okay, no, the women carry. I mean, I don't know why, babe. That's just the culture. They carried the water jug. That's why.
Okay.
That's why when you find Rebecca for Isaac, she's at the water well.
She's at the
when
well,
you
yeah.
find the woman, she's at the water well. The women are carrying water at the water well. That's what they did. Okay, they carried the water. Now, the men never carried the jug for two reasons. One, it was humiliating. And two, it was not their job. It was just for them, it was like lesser than, it was kind of like a person who, wash feet. If you're not a servant, that's humiliating, which is what Jesus is going to show us. You humble yourself to be raised. Now watch this. Women didn't carry water jugs. Men didn't carry water jugs except in two certain occasions. There are only two times you would see a man carrying a water jug. Only two in the Bible. Do you know where they are?
This one.
This one and Joshua chapter 9. So go there real quick. Joshua chapter 9, verse 4.
Joshua 9:4.
Yep. Joshua chapter 9, verse 4.
Okay.
Okay.
This is what it says. They acted deceptively. They gathered provisions and took worn-out sacks on their donkeys and old wineskins cracked and mended. Is this right?
No, that ain't right at all. Are you in Joshua?
Joshua 9.
I'm losing confidence in what he asked us to read.
I have no idea what's going on right here. So let me just give you. Let me look this up. Maybe
So
Robert
the
can
only
help
thing
me.
we got is old wineskins.
No, I need to look this up because. Okay, here we go. Man with the water jug right here. I'm trying to find my notes. So back in the day, if Joshua comes into a city and they ransack the city, they wanted to punish and humiliate the men. They would force the men to carry the water jugs. It was a form of humiliation. It's in Joshua 9:21. What is it? 9:27. Thank you, Robert. I knew it's in Joshua, and I knew it was 9. I just don't have the reference.
And it says, on that day he made them woodcutters and water carriers, as they are today, for the community and for the Lord's altar at the place he would choose.
Yeah. So basically, he is they're humiliating the town they ransacked. Okay. Is that the Gibeonites?
Yep.
Yeah, the Gibeonites. I knew that part. So they come in and they humiliate them by making them carry water jugs. So if you saw a man carrying a water jug, he was being punished or he was being humiliated.
Right.
The only other exception is because the Essene community is made up of mostly men, like a monastery.
Yeah.
Watch this.
Ooh, they had to.
They had to carry. They had no problem carrying a water jug. So what's culturally was humiliating in one culture was acceptable in the other. So this is a man carrying a water jug. Now watch this. When Jesus says to the disciples, "Go into the town and look for the man carrying the water jug," who are they looking for?
An Essene.
An Essene.
Wow.
An
But
Essene.
why is he in the town
Now watch this. Gets even better. Well, some
and not in the community?
Some Essenes did live in the town.
Among the
Some
people?
they did live among the people. So this guy. So you got to think too, though, because a man's carrying a water jug in Jerusalem,
He's going to stand out like a sore
Oh,
thumb.
he's like driving down Main Street of Disney World with a flashing car and Mickey Mouse in the back seat. You're not going to miss this guy. I mean, it's like a guy walking around with a billboard saying, "Look at me, look at me, look at me," right? So Jesus says, "Go." Well, I always read this story and thought, man, they're trying to find some, needle in a haystack.
Oh, yeah.
Golly, how are they going to find? Because you got to remember.
But it would have been obvious.
Yeah, for Passover, there's 1 million or 2 million people in town for the celebration.
Right.
How you going to find a guy? No, this guy would have been easy to find. He's like, "Look at me." So this guy's walking with the water jug, and then he says, "Hey, we're going to come to your house." And I've always thought this was odd. Like you just walk up to a random guy, 2 thugs from Galilee, or 2 fishermen, and it's like, "Hey,
The master says we need.
we need to come to your house." Master said it, and he says, "Okay, bring the whole gang over." And I thought that, so I've always like played it off like, it's just another miracle of Jesus. No,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, really, but not really, because why? Notice what they tell the man.
What verse are we in again?
We're in Luke chapter 22, verse 20. No, Luke chapter 22, verse 11. Now watch this. Jesus says, "Tell this man something specific," and this line unlocks the house.
Okay.
Why? Notice the line, verse 11.
Tell the owner of the house, the teacher asks you, where is the guest room where I can eat the Passover with my disciples?
Okay. Who asks?
The teacher.
The teacher.
The teacher of righteousness.
So that's what they would have said.
It's not a teacher. It's the teacher. The teacher.
Right.
They knew that when he came, they knew when Messiah comes, he will enjoy Passover, Pesach, with his disciples, with the nation. So he's putting all the pieces together. The teacher, okay, this is the guy we're waiting on. He's going to eat the Passover he's going to eat it with us a day before. Because a lot of people say, well, the timeline doesn't make sense. How can Jesus eat Passover on Passover and then die on Passover? It doesn't make sense. Well, he's technically, in the footnote of Passover, he's eating the Passover, just not with the nation.
Yeah.
He's eating it with the Essenes the day before.
Yeah.
And so Jesus eats the Passover, and the guys goes to the guy, and he's like, "Hey, bring them all upstairs," and that's how they eat it.
Wow.
He eats it at the home of an Essene.
Wow.
Never heard that before.
Yeah, who's waiting for the teacher of righteousness. Okay.
Wow.
Now, we're going to go back next week. I know this was a rabbit trail.
Can I ask a question real quick?
You can ask a question.
Earlier in the let me do the finger like Candace. I have a question.
Okay.
Earlier in the episode, you said that the Essenes believed in 2 messiahs, but that may have been one Messiah, two roles. Does that, I'm holding my hands out like this culture had no problem thinking on two hands, believing two different things at one time. So is that why they could kind of think the two roles and be okay with that?
Yeah, and I would, not to mess you up even more, but
Mess me up. Come
even
on,
the
Pastor.
nation believed in like two forms of a Messiah. So they believed in like a triumphant Messiah,
Right.
But they also believed in what they called the leper Messiah. We could probably get into that next week. Did you hear about this? The
No, I
leper.
did not.
The leper Messiah?
Yeah.
Because
All
he
right.
heals leprosy?
Here we go. Cliffhanger for next
Well,
week.
I don't know if we should go down that road, but yeah, they did believe in a leper Messiah. And I'll give you a hint. It comes from Isaiah 53. Isaiah 53. Maybe we'll pick that up next week. Yeah, that's
Okay.
a good cliffhanger
All right, we'll
for
pray
next
about
week.
that.
Yeah.
Okay, so Pastor,
about it.
give me just one thing for groups to discuss. So if you're meeting with a group right now, if you guys are talking about this, help me unpack this a little bit. What's a thought that we need to carry?
Yeah,
with
I
us?
mean, look how consistent and disciplined these Essenes are, and yet, if we look at our own life, at times we're not even close to or even disciplined at all. So I would say, what are the benefits of having a rule of life like them, a disciplined life, and what are some ways you could be a little more disciplined in your life with your reading, with your prayer, with your time with God?
Yeah, one thing that stood out is they were disciplined, but they weren't legalistic. So if they were legalistic, they'd do Passover like everybody else did, regardless of what they thought.
Yeah.
But they were disciplined. But anyways, okay.
That's good.
Cool. Well, that's a great question.
Let me. I would say yes. From their point of view, they wouldn't say they were legalistic. From our point of view, we could say legalism is I'm doing these things, so you do this.
Okay.
So in a sense, they were kind of legalistic. I would say you would say they weren't acquiescing. They weren't getting in line with every other thing the culture was doing. They were trying to make a statement.
Separate and apart.
Yeah, they were trying to be separate.
How do
Yeah.
you- what was that word? I've never said that word.
Acquiesce. They
I would
were
never say that word.
acquiescing.
All right. Well, hey, thank you so much.
Bending, yeah.
Thank you for joining us on this episode. If you enjoyed it, share it with a friend. We'd love to connect with you. Also on Instagram at The Forgotten Jesus. Thank you, Pastor. Thank you, Candy. And we will see you guys on the next episode.